Hi everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's painting time-lapse, which for the first time features a digital painting that I made on a special tablet. I'm using a PicassoTab from the Simbans brand, which is an Android tablet that retails for only around $230. It's a great, more economic alternative to an iPad Pro if you want to get started with digital painting like me. And I don't have that much experience, so I didn't really want to invest too much money into an expensive iPad. And this PicassoTab actually works great. I'll get into the functionalities later, but first let's take a look at what you get for only $229. In the box, we have a plethora of accessories, including this awesome fake leather tablet sleeve or tablet cover, and it also serves as a stand for when you want to prop up the tablet on a desk. And of course, here's the tablet itself, which is about 10 inches wide and it runs on Android. And it also comes with a stylus, which accompanies the tablet beautifully, and also a lot of charging accessories, such as the USB-C charging cable. And interestingly, they have a bunch of converters so that you can plug in the adapter into any outlet all around the world. This glove is probably my favorite accessory that comes in this box, and it's a glove that you put over your ring and pinky fingers so that when you draw on the tablet, you can rest your hand on the screen without your hand interfering with the touch screen sensitivity. I just think it's a very genius and useful utility. And if you're interested in this tablet, I'll have all the information posted in the video description. The app I'm using to do my painting is the Autodesk Sketchbook App, which comes free with this tablet. So I wanted to start off by demonstrating some of the tools available to this app in case anyone out there wants to use Autodesk Sketchbook. It's quite convenient. It was really fun. Here you can use your fingers to drag and drop the canvas and rotate it so that your hand can rest comfortably. On the right side is my layers panel where you can see all the different layers that I used for this painting. With each layer, you can alter the opacity, the blending mode. There's also a bunch of different customization options. Here is the color picker. You can use a customizable color wheel and choose your own colors. You can adjust the hue, the saturation, and the values, the light and dark, which is pretty cool if you want more custom colors. But on the right here is the Copic color selector, which comes with these preset colors by the Copic brand, which makes our favorite alcohol-based markers. I actually really love the preset colors just because I didn't want to make all these decisions myself, and the colors they chose looked really good. They weren't overly saturated, and they separated them by the different kind of Roy G. Biv values and some neutrals. So I predominantly stuck with the pinks and the lavenders to get that kind of pastel sunset vibe for my cloud goddess. Now we're going to switch to the left side where we have our brushes. They have many different types of brushes and erasers, simulating different mediums. We have our pencil brush, different ink brushes, airbrush, which is like a soft one, and watercolor brushes. They're way more than what's listed here. This is just kind of a preview of all the brushes available in their extensive brush library. You can adjust the different sizes of your brush and how it relates to the pressure you apply on your stylus. So obviously the more pressure you apply, the thicker the line gets, and the less pressure you apply, the lighter and thinner the line. You can customize it, so I had some of mine set to also a lower opacity with lighter pressure and then a heavier, more opaque opacity with heavier pressure. This is just what I'm doing to try to replicate the real life painting experience as much as possible, though I have to admit I did struggle a lot with familiarizing myself with the rules for digital painting. It's very tough not having that tactile response, not having something tangible that I can feel or get a feel for with my fingers. So a lot of it was just me experimenting with these different settings until I found one that was comfortable. And right now I'm using the Smudge Tool, which is great for blending and softening things. The Smudge Tool simulates kind of those smudge sticks in real life, except they smudge anything. So even though this previous brush I used looks like almost like a wet ink type of brushstroke, I can still use the Smudge Tool to blur that out. And it's great for areas like the skin tone, for example. Now I will show you quickly just this little knob on the top here. You can drag and drop this to be wherever you want, but basically you can press your stylus down and then slide it to change the saturation if you slide it left or right, or the brightness, which they call luminance, if you slide it up and down. So it's, again, another really quick kind of shortcut tool so that you don't have to keep opening and closing menus, and it makes the painting experience a lot more streamlined. Now I'll be quickly demonstrating my technique when it comes to digital painting. I'm, like I said before, very new. I pretty much only use digital painting to do rough mock-ups to plan my oil paintings. So this is my first piece where I used it as a serious medium to try to create like a final polished piece of art. So I just lowered the opacity of whatever brush I'm using. Like, you can barely even see it on the screen, but with the very, very low opacity, I can just use several brush strokes to eventually build up a gradient. So if I want one area to be dark, I don't just go in with a dark brush. I'll just keep my very low opacity brush and just go over it many, many times until that area is dark enough. And usually with that repeated layering on motion, it will create a nice gradual blend or gradient. Also with the lower opacity, it just kind of gives me more granular control. This way I don't have to worry about getting each brushstroke looking perfect. I can just kind of take the average of several brushstrokes. By the way, if you want to see a longer and more comprehensive version, I have a 30-minute tutorial video uploaded on my Patreon that also comes with accompanying step-by-step progress photos. You can check that out and hundreds of hours of more rewards at patreon.com/happydartist. Okay, finally on to the painting demo. I just want to say a disclaimer right off the bat that I am not the most experienced digital painter. Coming from a traditional background, it was a bit of a struggle, especially at first, to familiarize myself with this digital environment. I'm very used to having some sort of tactile feedback when it comes to making art. What I mean by that is, for example, when I apply pressure on my brush onto my painting surface, there's usually a bit of friction or a hardness to the surface. I can hear the different levels of pressure on my brush stroke. Like, the more force I use, the louder the sound. I can also determine if I am making a line that is straight or is too wobbly based on the angle of my hand and how that affects the angle of the bristles. So just little things like that where I use as indications or signs that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Those were all completely different in the digital world. While the tablet and the stylus are very responsive and they simulate traditional mediums fairly well, it definitely did take a bit of a steep learning curve for me to just get acclimated with digital painting as a whole. As I mentioned before, it's not a format that I'm too experienced in. I dabbled in digital painting a bit, like way back, probably in high school and middle school. Nothing really became of it. And then afterwards, I basically used Adobe Photoshop to quickly make digital mock-ups to help plan out my oil paintings, like in terms of choosing color schemes and roughly mapping out the composition. So I've never actually sat down and tried to seriously make a digital work of art. So in this time lapse, you'll see me make several mistakes. You'll see me starting over and fixing things. I also change my mind a lot of the times. And I feel like it was honestly pretty useful for me to leave all of this raw footage in, especially the parts where I make mistakes, because it just goes to show that the actual process of creating a piece of artwork is not so straightforward and smooth sailing as a lot of the time lapses that we see on YouTube will have us believe. Especially if you're just getting started with a new medium, or if you're just getting started in general, it's going to be a long kind of up and down process of a lot of trial and error. So making art isn't just about taking every step from a blank page to your final goal and taking steps to reach that goal. There's a lot of obstacles and roundabout ways and backtracking that happens all along the way. So the progress from beginning to end of a piece of artwork isn't just a linear upwards trajectory. It's going to be full of ups and downs and valleys and peaks. And I wanted to really capture that and share that because this painting, while it was really fun for me, at parts were super frustrating, but overall, I would say that at the end, it definitely got easier. In the beginning, it just took me so long to even try to get one small feature down or try to fix one small mistake. But towards the end, as I just practiced more and became more comfortable using the tools, a lot of things became like muscle memory to me, and the process itself was so much more enjoyable. So if you're watching or listening to this and you're struggling with a new medium or just struggling with your art process in general, just know that this feeling is totally normal. We all go through it. And I think once you just get over that hump, it becomes so much more of a enjoyable and fun process. But definitely it's hard to avoid feeling lost or stuck or frustrated. I would encourage all of us to just kind of embrace that as the nature of making art and the nature of learning a new craft, instead of letting it discourage us too much. A great example is right here in my time lapse. I initially wanted to add trees because I thought it would be cool to make a cloud goddess emerging from the trees as if she were some sort of giant. But then later on, I just felt like the trees distracted from the focal point, which is the face and the head portion. I just feel like my eyes didn't know where to look, whether to focus on the top part of the painting or the bottom part. They were kind of both fighting for attention. So ultimately, I just decided to get rid of the trees and just that entire concept, and instead expand upon the cloud concept. I wanted the clouds really to be the focal point. I wanted it to be dramatic and ethereal, and honestly, having the trees there, I felt like initially I put the trees there because I maybe felt the clouds were a bit too simple just by themselves. But later I realized that simplicity actually works better in this case, because sometimes less is more, and adding too much to a painting can not always be a good idea. Sometimes it's actually better to leave things out than to try to cram everything in. I also had a lot of issues with the face. Here, I actually thought I was done with the face, and as you can see, I was building on the background so much more and not really working on the face anymore. But as I finished up and rendered the background to completion more, I also just couldn't put my finger on what was bothering me about the face. It was more like her expression was not exactly the way I had envisioned. So I wanted her to have a more mysterious kind of expression, and I wanted her gaze to be more alluring and more elusive, I guess. So I spent a lot of time just fixing up the face. Painting eyelashes was actually very difficult for me as well, because eyelashes are kind of like a smooth and very crisp line, and they stand out. So you can't just kind of blend eyelashes into the background. They have to stand out on their own. And for me, painting clean, smooth curves was still a struggle because I was not used to the stylus yet. So my way to work around that was actually just to darken a lot of the shadows around her eyes so that the eyelashes would not be so apparent. And that way they elegantly just blend into the dark shadows of the eyes. And it also made the eyes and therefore her gaze a lot more pronounced. So ultimately that kind of worked out, but definitely a lot of back and forth in slowly tweaking the facial features until I could get it looking the way I wanted. Another interesting thing about this digital painting experience was I didn't actually find a lot of use out of the brushes that tried to simulate traditional mediums. There were a lot of brushes in the library that tried to replicate like an oil paint kind of texture or a watercolor texture. And even though my goal for this digital painting was to get it looking pretty close to my oil paintings, I actually struggled with just trying to maintain and deal with all the extra issues that came with those more fancier simulating brushes. Instead, I thought it was actually way more straightforward and easy to use to just go with a simple round brush that had a slightly soft feathered edge. And by using a low opacity, like I mentioned earlier, and gradually building upon the layers like I would in real life, it just made the process so much easier for me than trying to actually simulate a traditional medium in a digital world. I feel like if I just kind of embraced this digital set of tools, instead of trying to make it something it's not, but just embracing what it actually is, the end result just came out looking so much more close to what I had envisioned. And I feel like I can try to recreate this painting in oils, and it would look very different than how it would look in a digital world. And that's totally fine. Some of the beauty of trying out different mediums is because of how different they look, not because we are trying to make all the different mediums look like the same end result. And that about wraps up today's painting demo. Thank you all so much for watching my very first digital painting video on this channel. If you liked it, please let me know, and I'd be happy to maybe try out some more digital paintings and share more time lapses. If you're interested in purchasing a print of this piece, I do have it listed in my shop at happyd-artist.com. And also because I'm sure we're all still in some sort of quarantine or lockdown situation and spring just feels extra long, I've decided to just extend my spring sale again. So if you want to get 20% off of your order of everything, including originals, just enter the code SPRING at happyd-artist.com. And if you're interested in learning more about how to paint and draw, I have lots of art educational content on my Patreon page, including exclusive video tutorials, step-by-step photo tutorials, live streams, podcasts, and even surprise art gift boxes. All available at patreon.com/happydartist. I'd love to have you join my Patreon family. Also, if you want to check out more artworks, works in progress, and just random daily artist adventures, feel free to check out my Instagram, and you can follow me at the handle @happydartist.